Hello and welcome to today's webinar, Online Assessments with Google Forms. This session is part of a series of free webinars offered every week or two by the Stark Portage Area Computer Consortium, or SPARC for short. SPARC is an information technology center in Northeast Ohio where we support about 30 school districts. However, this webinar is open to everyone, and we would like to welcome all the people who have joined us live today or are watching the recording in the future. My name is Eric Curts, and I am a technology integration specialist here at SPARC, and I will be your presenter for this session today. I am joined by my colleague, Anthony Luscre, who will be monitoring our Q&A document. A little bit more information about that later. All of the information for today's webinar can be found online at tiny.cc/SPARC 210. Now, you may already be at that page if you're watching the live webinar, but if you're watching in the future and you're catching this on YouTube or somewhere else, I would definitely encourage you to go to this link, and we're going to head out there right now as well and show you what we've got available there. So again, that's tiny.cc/SPARC 210. Let me give that a click and you'll see where that takes us out to. Here we go. So this is the website for the webinar today. What you'll notice here is we have the streaming video right now, which will later be replaced by the recorded video. So you can always come back to this in the future to watch this, this recording again. Below there, we have some session resources. The first one to draw your attention to is there is a sample quiz for this session. And so if you have not taken that yet, I would encourage you just to scroll down below the video and click on that link for the sample quiz. I'll give it a click right now just so you can see what it looks like. Very simple little sample quiz. Got a spot for your name and your email address. Got some questions, science, math, history, a few things mixed in there. I would encourage you to take that quiz if you would. We'll be using the data from that later on in the session here today. Below that, there are a couple of help guides. Now, there's two different help guides linked in. One of them is just called Using Google Forms. Well, that one is more of a overall general help guide about Google Forms, not specific to online assessments, but it's a great place to begin. So if you've never done anything with Google Forms, this is where you should begin with this help guide. It's about 12 pages long and goes into all the details you'd ever need to know about creating forms and inserting questions and all sorts of great things like that. And then the other help guide that we have linked in there is called Using Google Forms for Online Assessments. Now, that's more specific as to what we're going to be looking at here today. And that's going to go into more of the details about if you're using forms specifically for a quiz, the different steps you need to go through on that. That one's about a 7-page long document. So those are available for you there, as well as the slideshow that I'm going through right now. In addition to that, we do have our live session chat document right below there. If you want to give that a click, that'll open up a Google Doc that you have edit rights to. And if you've got any questions or comments, please put those in the chat document there. That way we can make this a little bit more interactive. Nearer to the end of the session, I will hopefully have some extra time, and Anthony is going to be watching that document all the way through, and he'll relay on to me some questions or comments or suggestions that come in from you guys throughout the webinar. Below there is a link to the session evaluation. We would love to hear your thoughts on this. So afterwards, give that a click. It's a real quick, like 4-question evaluation just to let me know some feedback on this session. And then below that is a link to another quiz, not the sample quiz, but a session quiz. This is to let you get a certificate of attendance. So by watching this webinar, you can click this link to fill out, again, a very short 5-question quiz. And if you pass that quiz, you'll be sent through email a PDF certificate of attendance for 1 contact hour, which you can turn into your school if they honor that sort of thing for their LPDC or for their PD credit. So that is available for you there. All of those things can be found, as we mentioned, on our website at tiny.cc/SPARC 210. Now, beyond just the web page for this session today, I will really quickly just draw your attention to the fact that there are a few links at the top of that page, such as the PD schedule link that will take you out to all of our upcoming webinars. We've got lots more coming up in the upcoming weeks and months. And then there's a link at the top to our recorded trainings, and this will let you see the webinars we've done in the past. So this list is growing all the time. I would definitely encourage you to go back through our back catalog and catch some of the other recorded webinars that may be useful to you. Another link to draw your attention to in the top is the newsletter link. If you would like to never miss an announcement about an upcoming webinar, you can sign up for our free e-newsletter that'll get emailed out typically once a month, maybe twice if there's some special information, and just kind of keep you up to date on upcoming webinars. And finally, there is a link to contact so that you can get in touch with me or with Anthony. Our information is there. All right, good stuff. Well, let's get back to the presentation and begin. So for our agenda today, these are the things we're going to be running through. First of all, we're going to do a brief conversation about why to use online assessments, and then specifically why Google Forms. Why is that the particular tool we're going to be looking at? After that, we're going to create and administer a very simple sample quiz using Google Forms. And then finally, we will use an add-in called Flubaroo to grade the quiz and then email the results out to the participants. As far as the prerequisites for this session, you should have a Gmail or a Google Apps account. Either one is certainly fine. Now, you don't need an account to take a quiz, but to create a Google form, yes, you would need a Google account. Either a personal Gmail account or a school-provided Google Apps account would work as well. It would be helpful to have a general understanding of forms. If you've never used them before, that's okay. If you've got some experience with them, it'll probably be a little bit easier for you. I definitely will be taking this slow as we go through the creation of the quiz. But again, if you've got a little bit of an understanding of forms, that'll be better for you. You certainly need access to Google Docs because that's where we go to create Google Forms. And then again, as a reminder, as a prereq, it would be great if you would take that sample quiz that we have linked in on the main page. You can also get to it through a tiny.cc address, tiny.cc/sample-quiz. That'll get you to the same quiz as well. As a quick note, this is an introductory session. So if you've never done anything with forms, if you've never made a quiz with them, you're in the right place. This is an introductory session. Having said that, there's a lot of stuff that we just won't possibly be able to get to in the 1 hour that we have here today. So our intention is to have a second webinar in the near future that would be an advanced Google Forms for assessments, where we'll dig into some more specific things that we can't get into today in the time that we have. So this is definitely a level 1 type course, and we'll have a follow-up with some more advanced tools and topics in the future. All right, so as we mentioned, the first thing we were going to talk about is why? Why even do online assessments? What's wrong with paper and pencil? Why not just do what we've always done with that? Well, there's a lot of good reasons for using online assessments, things such as quicker feedback. It's a whole lot faster to let it get graded electronically than for you to take home a stack of papers and get them back to the student by the next day when the computer can do it for you instantaneously, which means you could have more frequent assessments since they can be created and graded very, very quickly. It does make it easier for you to analyze the results from that since it's already digital. It's in a spreadsheet. You can quickly do item analysis and see how your students are doing. Doing online assessments can be a great way to prepare students for other upcoming online assessments like PARCC or AIR or Smarter Balanced, which many of our states are using. And doing online assessments is a great way to support formative assessments. A lot of times we talk about summative assessments, which are the tests we give at the end of a chapter to see what students have learned. Formative assessments are incredibly powerful assessments that we give during the learning process, not necessarily to assign a grade or maybe even put it in the grade book, but just to see, are students understanding what we're teaching? Do we need to circle back around and reteach something again? Well, online quizzes are a great way to do that quick pulse check with your students. A couple other benefits: it is easy to collaborate and share with others. So if you and some colleagues want to work together on creating quizzes, you can do that electronically. Also makes it easy to edit in the future. You can just go in and change some things around, drag and drop, put in some different questions, change a question very easily since it's digital. Another nice thing about online assessments is they do work with assistive technology. Because it's digital, because it's a web page online, you can use things like text-to-speech tools. Those of you who watched my recent webinar on Google Tools for Special Needs, you saw we spent some time talking about different text-to-speech tools like Speak It and other things like that. Well, that can be used to read the quizzes to the students because they're digital. Another great thing is that these quizzes will work on pretty much any device. You don't have to have a special device. It can be a desktop, a laptop, a Mac, a PC, a Chromebook. It can be a tablet, iPad, Android tablet. It can be a phone, Android phone, iPhone, whatever the case. You can pretty much fill out these online assessments using any device you have, which is nice. And lastly, it saves on paper and printing, which that's not a bad thing. A lot of times budgets are tight, and so anything to save on paper and printing is good. With all of that said, though, there are challenges, certainly. You do have to have access to technology. If students don't have a device, a laptop or a tablet or a phone or a computer, then yes, that is a barrier to them being able to do online assessments. So that can be a challenge for schools, as well as access to connectivity, making sure that students have Wi-Fi access wherever they're at. Other challenges might be a limit on the type of questions that you can include in an online assessment. Thankfully, Google Forms does support quite a lot of different questions, and we'll see that soon. But some of them, don't. For example, drag and drop questions. Those are becoming very popular on the PARCC type assessments. And for example, Google Forms currently does not support drag and drop as an example. And lastly, there's always the concern about student cheating. And yeah, that is certainly a possibility that if something is digital, it might be easier to take a screenshot of it or to get copies of that information and, copy and paste and forward it on somewhere else. So that always is a concern. But at the same time, I think a lot of the assessments that I'm probably encouraging are more of along the lines of formative assessments, where you maybe aren't even giving a grade. You're just getting that pulse check to see where the student is, how well they're learning, so you can adjust your instruction, at which point the encouragement to cheat is very low, since it really is just to see how the students are doing. All right, with all of that said, you've got a lot of choices out there as far as what you would use to do online assessments. EdSite, Edulastic, Socrative, Quizlet, Kahoot, on and on and on down the line. So many great tools out there, and those are all fine. I absolutely encourage you to try out each and every one of those. Find the right tool to fit your need. For today, though, we're going to be looking at Google Forms and seeing why that is a good tool to use for doing online assessments. Some of the reasons why I like to use Google Forms. First of all, it is a tool that is designed from Google to create forms, surveys, quizzes. It is free, no cost at all involved in it, and it's really easy to use. You can jump right in and get using it right away. It does support 9 different types of questions. And since I mentioned that, I might as well show them to you real quick. I did put a link here in the slideshow, so I'll just go ahead and fire that up real quick, and I'll show you what those different questions look like, those 9 different question types. Let me zoom in here so we can see this a little bit better. The first type is a text type, where you just type in a few words into a text box. The second is the paragraph text, where if you type that in, and if I type in a whole bunch here, you'll see if I get down far enough, it starts scrolling. So you do get a scroll bar there. So that's good for like essay questions. Next, there's multiple choice, where you can only pick one answer, and as you choose a different answer, it deselects the first and goes to the other. But then there's also check boxes, which allow you to choose more than one answer at a time, and that's important. We're seeing a lot of that on next generation assessments. There is what's called choose from a list, which is really multiple choice. It just happens to be on a drop-down list. Then there's the scale type and the grid type. Scale type lets you pick something along a numeric scale, where the grid type lets you pick something along a more qualitative scale, where you put in words at the top rather than numbers. There's 2 more left. There's one for picking a date. You can go in and choose a date, and there's another type of a question where you can enter a time. So those are the 9 different types of questions that Google Forms currently supports. Other things that are great about Google Forms is that you can insert images and videos, and that's really useful to provide charts or graphs or diagrams for the student to look at while taking the quiz, as well as watching videos, which does support the PARCC ELA tests, where students do need to watch a video and then answer questions based on that. What else? Google Forms can be anonymous. So if you want to do a poll or a survey and you want to keep it anonymous, that's fine. But you can also set them up to collect the students' usernames, which really helps to make sure you're getting the right grade for the right student. A couple other nice things about Google Forms as far as how the process works. Basically, you would create a form, you would share the link out with others, which is what we're going to do here in just a bit. Other people would then complete that form online, and as they do, all their responses get collected into a spreadsheet, which you can then analyze and even auto-grade with the Flubaroo add-on. And all of that makes for just a really nice, simple process. Well, before we go ahead and dive into creating a form, I want to give just one more quick little clarification. And that is, if you're using a personal Gmail account versus a school-provided Google Apps for Education account, there's a slight difference. For the most part, they're exactly the same product when you go in to use Google Forms. However, if you're using a school-provided Google Apps for Education account, you do get two extra features that don't show up in the personal Gmail option. One is you can set it so that a student must be logged into their school-provided account to take the quiz. So there's a checkbox, we'll see that, where you can say you can't take the quiz unless you're logged into your school account. And then because of that, you can also collect their usernames automatically. They don't have to type in their email address. It'll just grab that from their login. That's a really nice feature to have. That's one of the benefits of using Google Apps for Education versus the personal Gmail. Otherwise, they're exactly the same product when it comes to using Google Forms. All right, guys. Well, we need to get on with the session. And so we're going to go to create a Google form. And as a reminder to you, all of the help guides and other resources for this session can be found at tiny.cc/spark210. So at this point, we need to go to Google Drive because that's where we're going to build our form. That's where we're going to make a form. So wherever you're at right now, if you want to follow along, what you want to do is you want to get to your Google Drive. Now, we've talked about this a lot in the past, all the different ways to get to Google Drive. I'm going to go ahead and open up a new tab. So a nice blank new tab here. And I'll remind you just a couple of quick ways to get to Google Drive. If you are signed into your Google account, you can always look in the top right-hand corner, and there should be a little 3x3 grid. That's like the Apps Launcher button that we like to call the waffle button up there in the top right-hand corner. If you give that a click, you'll get some of your most common Google services, including Drive. That's one way to get to Google Drive. If you're using a Chromebook, another possibility is down in the bottom left-hand corner. You'll probably have several icons down there, and one of those might include Drive. And if you don't see it there, there is a similar Apps Launcher button in the bottom left-hand corner. And from there, you can look through and you should be able to find your Drive icon like mine right there. Another option, if all else fails, is you can just type it in. It's nothing more than drive.google.com, and that will work as well. So whichever approach you take, where we want everybody to be right now is at their Google Drive screen. All right, fantastic. So your screen should look pretty much like what I've got up here. If you're using the old version of Google Drive, if you haven't rolled up to the new version, the big difference is in the top left-hand corner where my button says New, yours might say Create, but that's okay. It will still accomplish the same thing. So here's our Google Drive, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new form. Now, before I do, though, I think I'm going to create it inside of a specific folder so I can find it later. You don't have to. You can create yours wherever you want. I'm going to open up this test folder just so when I do create it, I can find it a little bit easier because I've got a lot of files here. So from my test folder here, I'm going to go ahead and click on my New button. So you should do the same. Click on New or click on Create, whichever button you have there. And from the drop down here, it shows me all the different things I can create. Like I can create a Google document or a Google spreadsheet or a Google slide. If I go down to my More button and kind of hover above that, I then get a pop-up with some more things, including Google Forms, and that's what we want. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to click on New, More, and Google Forms. And by doing that, ta-da, it will create our new Google form for us. Excellent, and we're there. So this is what Google Forms looks like in edit mode. So this is the edit mode of Google Forms. Now I'm zoomed in a little bit here. Later on, I may zoom out a bit if we need to be able to fit a few more things on the screen at once. But this is the edit mode of Google Forms. And we're going to visit pretty much everything you see on this screen before we're done here. So we may not go from top to bottom. We'll jump around a little bit here. But to start off with, what we're going to begin is naming our form. So you can ignore all the stuff at the top for right now. That's fine. We'll come back to that later. But right here where it says untitled form, that's where we want to begin. So we're going to give it a name. Call your form whatever you want. I'll just call mine sample quiz. And then once I click off of that, you'll notice as soon as I'm done typing my title, once I click off of that, it'll also rename the form at the very top of the page too. So once I click off of sample quiz, yep, there we go. Now it's called sample quiz at the top as well. Excellent. Now below there's a box called form description. This is totally optional. You don't have to put anything in here, but that would be a great place to throw in any extra instructions or directions you want to include, such as please have this quiz done by Thursday before coming to class, or please read, chapter 2, pages 67 through 80, and then answer the questions below. You could do something like that if you've got any special information you want to put in this description box. By the way, if you include any web addresses in the description box, it will make those live hyperlinks. So that's a great way to give students links out to other supporting sites. You can just put those right in that description box. I'm not going to put anything in the description for this quiz. We're going to keep it really basic and really simple for now, but just wanted you to know what that was about. All right, guys, right below there is our first question. Google Forms starts you off by giving you one question that you can then edit. And then, of course, we can add more as we need to. So let's do it. Let's go ahead and edit our first question. So for our first question here at the top, there's a box that says question title, and that's where we need to type in what our question is. Now, my suggestion to you, if you're doing a quiz, probably start with something like enter your name. The reason I think that's good is because even if we do use the option to collect their email address automatically, sometimes students' names and email addresses don't quite sync up to the point that it's easy to tell who they are. You may say, well, I'm not sure by that abbreviated username at the start of the email address which student that is. So I think it's usually helpful to ask them to put in their name just for clarification. So that'll be our question. The box below there is optional. This is a help text box. If you need to explain the question a little bit more, you can always fill that in. Like, for example, I could say something like last name, comma, first name, if I wanted to put that in for the help text. Again, that's optional, just if you want to give them some more information about the question. All right, next thing down is what kind of a question is this? Now remember, we saw the 9 different question types. Well, if I click here, right now it says multiple choice. Out of all of these, text would make the most sense because I just really need them to type in their name in a simple text box. So I would go with text for that. And then if I go a little bit further down, I see a box that says required question. I can check that to make it required. And that would be a good idea. On a quiz, I would probably make everything required so that students can't skip over things. If they don't fill something out that's required, it will not let them submit the quiz. And that's pretty much it. We put in the question, some help text, chose the type of a question, said it's required. I'll click the blue Done button, and that will fold up that question. And so as quickly as that, we've went ahead and edited our first question, and it is there and it's ready to go. Now, after doing that, let me mention a couple things real quick. You can always go back in and change the question anytime you need to. So if I decided later on that I wanted to ask the question differently or change what type of a question it was, no problem at all. All you have to do is click on the question. Now, you can click anywhere on the question, or you can even click on the little pencil icon in the top right. That kind of does the same thing. But even if you just click in the middle, just give it a quick click, boom, it expands like that, just pops right open, and now you can go through and make any changes, hit done when you're finished, and whoop, folds right back up out of your way. Perfect. All right, guys, so we've got our first question, but we need another question. So how do we add more? Well, there's a couple of ways to add more questions. You can use the insert menu at the top. If you like to use the menu across the top, you can choose insert and choose the type of thing you would like to insert. Or a lot of times I just use the button right below my last question. That's the add item button. Now, instead of clicking on add item, I usually click the little teeny down arrow to the right of it, because that way when I go to add the item, I can actually pick what kind it is. Otherwise, I can click add item and then switch it later, but it's usually faster for me just to pick it right away. So I'm going to say for our second question, I'm going to ask the question, what's your email address? So we're going to ask the students to provide their email address to us. So that would be, again, a text question. So next to add item, I click the down arrow and I choose text. And there we go. So now we have question number 2 has popped up. So I will say, enter your email address. No help text is needed. I think they'll understand that. Although, I mean, you could say something like, be sure this is your school address or whatever. You could specify some things there. It is a text question. We'll leave that alone. And it is required, so I will check that. Now, I am going to do one more thing before hitting done on this. And that is, we're going to take advantage of the advanced settings. Most question types have this. Now, we didn't even look at this earlier because it didn't really apply to your name, but to your email address, I think I would like to take a look at this. There's a little box or a little spot here you can click on for advanced settings. And if you do, it'll expand and it will give you some options for things that pertain to that specific kind of question. So different types of questions like multiple choice or fill in the blank or whatever, they have different types of advanced settings. For a text question, the advanced setting you get is what's called data validation. And you may say, what is that and why would I care? Well, here's the idea. You want to make sure the students are putting in what you're asking for. If I'm asking for their email address, I want to make sure they're really putting in a real email address. And sometimes it may just be an accident. They type a comma instead of a period, or they put a space in there, or something goes wrong. Well, what's nice is by going to the advanced settings here and clicking on data validation, I can say that whatever the student fills into the box must meet a criteria. I can either say it has to be a certain number, a certain text, or a certain regular expression. For this, I'm going to say it needs to be a certain kind of text because email is it's a text thing, so that would fit. And when it says what kind of text does it need to be, here's my criteria. It can either contain certain words, not contain certain words, be an email address, or be a web address, a URL. Well, in this case, I would say it needs to be an email address. And so I would choose that. And as simple as that, we've now said that whatever they type in must be validated as being text and being a legitimate email address as far as matching the pattern of an email address. And there I am. I'm happy with that now. So I've got enter your email address. I've made it required. I've said the data validation is it must be an email address. Click the blue done button and folds away. And there's question 2. So we've got our first question and our second question. Now remember, I did say earlier there is a way to automatically collect the student's email address. We will talk about that later. So adding the email address here definitely is important if you are using a personal Gmail account rather than Google Apps for Education, because if you don't collect their email address, there's no way to send them their scores on the quiz, okay? There is a way around this with a Google Apps for Ed account, and so we will circle back around to that later. So this can be an optional item if you're using a school account. We'll come back around to that. Well, guys, I think it's time to start asking a quiz question. So we got their name, we got their email address. Now we want to actually ask a quiz question. So you pick whatever question you would like to ask. I'm going to do a multiple choice question, and I'm just going to pick one that we used on our sample quiz from earlier. So where it says add item, I'll click the little down arrow. And from there, I'm going to choose multiple choice. And again, you can always change this later. If you pick something, you're like, nope, that's not the one I wanted. No problem at all. Remember, you can always choose what type of a question it is there. All right. Well, I'm going to do a multiple choice question. So for the question, I'll type in about what percent of the air is oxygen. That was actually one of the questions on the quiz that I asked you guys to take in preparation for the webinar. So there's my question. Now below here, I've got a spot where I can then put in my different answers. And so as I add more answers, I'll get more boxes down here. So I'll say one of my options is 20%. Then I'll move down here and say another one is 40%. And then we'll move down and say another one is 60%. And one more, we'll give an 80%. There we go. And so I can just keep going down there, adding in my different options that will be available through the multiple choice question. At any point, if I decide that one of these doesn't need to be in here, I've got these X's over to the right. I can actually delete one. So if I said, oh, I don't need 40%, I could hit my X and it would remove it. If I decided later I needed to put it back, no problem. I could just click here, type 40% in. And now if I'm concerned that it's not in the right order, no problem. Right at the very start of these answers, there's these teeny little dots here. Those are like a handle. If I put my mouse right on that and click and hold down, I can drag my answers around. So I'm grabbing those little dots right at the start of it. So I could drag these around and rearrange them if I need to. All right, so very easy to edit those. Now, while we're here, let me show you a neat trick. So let's say that, and again, you don't have to do this, just kind of watch and I'll show you this cool little trick. So let's say I've got this question and maybe I'm not making it up just on the spot. Maybe I've been using a quiz for years and I've already got this typed up somewhere else. Maybe it's in Microsoft Word or it's in a Google Doc and I've got this question somewhere else. And I've decided I'm going to switch over to Google Forms, but I don't feel like typing all of my questions up all over again. Well, here's a nice little time-saving thing. Let me go ahead and take these out. So I'm going to remove my answers here for a second. So we're kind of starting back where we were. Let's say that I do have this question already typed up somewhere else, and I do. I think I put it, we'll find it. Here it is. Okay, so there it is. So I've already got this typed up somewhere else. It says what percent of the air is oxygen, and I've got my 4 possible answers here. What I can do is I can come in and highlight and copy those 4 answers. So I'll come in here and I'll do copy those 4 answers. And then when I come back over to Google Forms, if I click in the first box for the answers, and if I right click and say I want to paste, Google is smart enough to figure out that each line break is actually a new answer. So if I go ahead and hit paste here, it will blurf, put those 4 in and create all 4 different answer spots there. So that can save you a little bit of time if you've already got things typed up somewhere else and just want to copy and paste them over. All right, so there's our question, there's our possible answers. If I go down a little further, I will make that required as usual. And then the advanced settings. Let me give a click on that and see what's special about multiple choice. Well, what you get for a multiple choice question under advanced settings is the ability to shuffle the option order. So if I check that, what that means is whenever a student gets this question, it will randomly shuffle the 4 possible answers. So if the correct answer was on the top for one student, it might not be for another, maybe in the 2nd, 3rd, or 4th position. So that can help cut down a little bit on somebody looking at their partner next to them and just seeing which answer they chose by the position it was in. So that certainly is an option you can turn on if you want. All right, let me hit done and whoosh, that one folds up. So what's your name, what's your email address, and the first question of our quiz. Now I'm just gonna do one more question, and I know we're keeping it really, really, really basic because we're just showing you the basic functions here. We wanna make sure we get through everything about creating the key and sending it out to the students and grading it and all of that. So we're gonna keep this very, very simple for this webinar. So let me add one more question. I'm going to add another text question. So I'm going to click on my little down arrow next to add item, say I want to add a text question. And for this one, I'm going to say, what molecule is shown in the image below? And then they'll just have, make that a question mark. And then they'll just have a text box to type in the molecule name. And I'm going to say that is required. And I'm going to hit done. You may say, whoa, Eric, where's the image? Well, that's what we want to talk about. We want to talk about putting in multimedia into your quiz. So Google Forms allows you to add images and allows you to add videos. But the thing is, they're added separately from your questions. So if you have a question that needs to have a picture or a video with it, it's not actually part of the question. If I click back on this question here, there's nowhere here to actually add the image or the video in the question. So you need to create the questions separately from the images and the videos. Okay, so that's what I'll do next. I've got the question created. Now I'll go down to my Add Item button. I'll click the little down arrow next to that, and you'll see that in addition to the 9 types of questions we can add, I can also add section headers, page breaks, images, and videos. Well, we're going to take a look at adding an image for our example here. So I'm going to go ahead and click on the little down arrow next to Add Item and then Image. And when I do that, that's going to open up the normal insert image screen. So this is probably very common. I'm actually going to zoom out just a bit at this point. I think I am a little, there we go. It was not quite fitting entirely on the screen there. So this is the normal screen you've seen if you use Google Docs, Google Slides, any sort of a Google product. Whenever you go to insert an image, it gives you 6 different options across the top about how you can put an image into your file. Same thing with Google Forms. If you want to add a diagram or a chart or a map or a graph or any kind of image into your quiz, you can go through all these different options that include, first of all, uploading. So you could click here to browse your hard drive, or if you had a memory card plugged into your Chromebook or plugged into your hard drive or to your laptop, you could browse that. So a flash drive, anything like that. That would be to upload something that you've already saved somewhere else. So if you've downloaded an image, saved it to your desktop, saved it to your downloads, your My Documents, you could upload it. There's also the take a snapshot option, which, hey, there I am. Hi everybody. So the snapshot option lets you use your webcam and you can take a picture right from there. There's also the by URL option, which allows you to paste in a web link to an image. There's the Your Albums option, which allows you to pull any images you've saved in either Picasa Web Albums or Google Plus Photo Albums. There's also Google Drive, which lets you browse through your Google Drive and grab any images that you've saved there. And then the 6th option is the search option. You can search either Google or Life magazine or stock photos to find images. Well, for my example, I'm going to go ahead and upload an image. I downloaded a little diagram of a molecule earlier, so that's what I'm going to use to go along with my question. You certainly can use whatever method works for you, and if you don't have a good image at the moment, you can just pick something as a sample just so you can kind of see how it works. So I'm going to go ahead and click on choose an image to upload, and we'll go to my desktop, and I think I threw it right in this forms folder, and there it is. Yes, my oxygen molecule picture. We'll go ahead and upload that, and there it is. As simple as that, it has now dropped that image into my form. Now I will pause for a moment here. There are some boxes here you can type in. You can type in a title for the image and hover text for the image. I usually don't type anything in here because this image is really just meant to complement my question that's above there. So I typically leave those boxes blank. If you do, though, need to change the image like size-wise, that's fine. You can click on it like any picture. You get the little blue boxes in the corners. I can click and make it bigger. I can drag and make it smaller. I can also make it centered, right, or left. So you've got some editing abilities there. When done, though, just click the Done button, and that's it. You've now got a question separate from the image, but they're kind of side by side, okay? All right, well, that's all that I'm going to add to this quiz. What's your name? What's your email address? 2 questions and a picture, okay? But if you wanted to add other things like a video, it works very much the same. I won't really add a video, but I'll just show you. If you click the down arrow and say you want to add a video, it allows you to either search YouTube for a video or paste the web address to a YouTube video. It does need to be a YouTube video that you embed into there. All right. Well, at this point, we'll pretend that I've got lots of more great questions, in this, but we're going to go ahead and stop at this point as far as creating more questions. A couple of things I'll mention, though, as far as if you did want to make more questions, certainly you could just keep hitting the Add Item button and making more. However, you can duplicate existing questions as well to save yourself a little bit of time. You might have noticed that when I take my mouse and I hover it above any one of the questions, in the top right-hand corner, I get these little pop-up buttons. One of them we've already seen, that's the pencil button that lets you edit the question. But right next to that is a button, which is the duplicate button. If you click that, it'll make a copy of that question, and then you can just go into the copy and just make changes to it. So if you've got a couple of questions that are really similar, save yourself some time and just duplicate the first one and then tweak it for the copy. There's also a trash can button next to that, which lets you delete a question if you decide you no longer need that question. And one more thing you can do is you can rearrange the questions. If it turned out that, hey, I didn't want this question to be the second one, I wanted this to be the first question, no problem at all. All you have to do is hover your mouse above the question. And when you click on it, you actually have to click, hold down, and drag. If you just do the normal click, you'll know what happens. Remember, you click, boom, it opens up to edit mode. So you can't just do a regular click. You actually have to click, hold down, and while holding down, now drag. And you see I can drag this question up, I can drag this question down. Same with the pictures. You can move stuff all around. I'll leave it where it's at, but you get the idea. You can rearrange these however you want. All right, guys. So at that point, we are going to say that we're done building the quiz as far as the questions go. What we're going to switch over to now is settings about the quiz. And there are settings in two locations. There are settings at the bottom of the quiz, and there are settings at the top of the quiz. And we do need to look at both of those. So let's do that real quick. We're going to start by looking at the top of the quiz. So at the top of your quiz, there are 5 options. Maybe there may only be 3 options. Here's where Google Apps for Education is different, and that's what we were mentioning earlier. If you're using Google Apps for Education rather than just a regular Google Gmail account, you get these 2 extra options. Let me zoom in again a little bit further so you can see this better. The first option is to require the user to be logged in to your domain. Now mine says Spark at the moment because I'm using our Spark domain, but it would say something like require your school login to view this form. If I check that box, the only way somebody can take my quiz is to be logged into their school account at my school. So that would be great to make sure that my students are actually using their accounts. That then gives me the option to check the second box, which is to automatically collect their username. Now, I know it says username, but it's really their email address that it collects. So if you check these 2 boxes here, the students have to be logged into their school account, and it will automatically grab their email address. Having said that, if you go with this option, you really don't need to ask this question down here about their email address. You could have skipped that one, and you still could delete it now if you didn't want it. That's the idea, is you need their email address, so you can either ask them for it, or if you're using a school account, you can actually require them to be logged in, and you can just collect it directly there. All right? Other options that are up here, there's an option to show a progress bar. Probably not too important here because this is a short quiz. There is an option to only allow 1 response per person. That means that after they fill it in, if they try to go back and take the quiz again, it would actually stop them from being able to take it a second time. That does require them, though, to be logged into a Google account. Okay, I'm not going to click on that one for my example, but it is a good one to use if you don't want the students taking the quiz more than once. There is another option below there, which is shuffle question order. Now, this one we have to use with care and caution because what it does is it randomizes the questions. Well, unfortunately, it randomizes everything. So that means the questions and the pictures too. Remember, the pictures are not attached to the questions. So if you're putting pictures into your quiz, and if you choose shuffle question order, that's going to be a mess because the picture won't be above or below as the question indicates that it is. So I would only use that if I was just using individual questions that are not tied to something else. Okay, so again, these options are up there, and I'll go ahead and uncheck them for now, but you get the idea. If I do check those, what those do for me. All right. If I scroll to the very bottom of the form, I now have a few options that deal with what happens after a student finishes the quiz. The first one, there's a confirmation box where you can type in a message you want to give, like, hey, thanks so much. Look for your grade soon, or something like that. Below there then is a checkbox to show them a link to submit another response. So if you did want somebody to be able to take a quiz more than once, you could check that. Probably doesn't make so much sense on a quiz, maybe more for like a brainstorming activity so they could keep submitting more brainstorming ideas. That would make sense. The next one is to publish a link to let people see the results. Well, that's not the results of the grading. That's just the results of what people have submitted. So that makes more sense for like a poll or a questionnaire. If you were doing like a voting, what's your favorite pizza topping? And then after you vote, you could click a link to see a graph showing what everybody else had said. Again, probably not too helpful on a quiz. And then the final option there is to allow the responders to edit their responses after submitting. If you check that, then what happens is when the student submits the quiz, they'll get a link that says, click this if you want to edit your responses. Now, again, that's perfectly fine if you would like your students to do that, if you want them to be able to, for example, retake the quiz later and not have to start from scratch, but just to be able to go in and edit the answers they put in before. So that is a possibility. All right, so just want you to be aware of the settings at the bottom and the top of the form. Well, one last setting before we go ahead and start sending this form out, and that is the theme. We haven't even talked about that. Well, at the top, you will see there are some buttons across the top of the form, and they say edit questions, change theme, view responses, and view live form. Well, we're in edit questions mode. Well, right next to that is a button that says change theme. Now, I'm going to zoom out a bit just so you can see the themes a little bit better because this might get a little crowded if I don't. So I'm going to temporarily zoom out here. So what I can do is I can click this change theme button up here on the top. And when I do, it's going to open up this panel over here on the right-hand side where I can scroll down through and see all kinds of themes like birthday cats. Of course, that's a perfect theme for a quiz. Or we've got one with books. We've got one with sailboats. We've got a science one, all kinds of great themes there. So you can go through and choose any of those themes. And not only can you choose the themes, you can also customize them. There's a link right below that says customize, that if you click on that, it will let you change all kinds of things about that theme. Now, that's what I do for the quizzes you guys take at the end of these webinars. So I'll try not to lose my place here. If I pop over to our webinar page, and if I go down to our certificate quiz at the bottom, and you click on that, you'll notice I have put a custom header in the top there. So instead of using any of the provided headers, I added my own header there at the top. So you can do that. You can customize the theme to make the form fit what you want it to be. All right, when you're done with that, you simply go back to the top left and you click on the Edit Questions button again to switch off of theme and pop back over to editing the questions. And that's it, guys, as far as creating the form. So at this point, we've done everything we're going to do to making the form. We put in the questions, we did that. We did our settings, we tweaked our theme. We now need to do just a few more things as far as using the form. We need to create the answer key. We haven't done that yet. That still needs to happen. Then we need to send the form out to our students. Then we need to look at their responses and grade them. So that's what we still have ahead of us. So that's what we're going to do next. All right. So as I mentioned, we have not made an answer key yet for this. And you might have been wondering, Eric, when you created these questions, why weren't you selecting the right answer? Well, because you don't actually do that when you're building the form. That's just not the way it works. Instead, the way it works is you have to take your own quiz. And when you take the quiz, that is when you create the answer key. So how do you take your own quiz? Well, again, across the top of the form, way at the very top here, you see we got these happy buttons up here. The fourth one over says View Live Form. If you click that button, it's going to open up this form in a new tab in live mode. Remember, this is edit mode. This is where we built the form. Live mode is where somebody can then take the form. They can fill it out. So let's do that. Let's go ahead at the top of our edit screen. Let's click on View Live Form. And what that does is it opens up a new tab where you can actually see your quiz. And you need to take it. You need to actually fill out your own quiz. Now, couple of words of warning or caution or ideas here, I guess I should say, is if you want to make sure that you can find the answer key later, you might decide where it says enter your name. Instead of typing in your name, you might want to type in something like answer key, so that later when you're looking at all of the responses, it might be easier to find yours and the whole group there. So that's a possibility. So put in your name, and then for your email address, of course, just go ahead and put in your regular email address there. All right. And then you need to go ahead and take your quiz, and you need to answer them correctly. So, what percentage of the air is oxygen, and what molecule is shown below, that is oxygen. And so I actually need to answer these correctly at this point because I'm trying to build the key for the quiz. So that's it. Put in your name or answer key, put in your email address, put in the correct answers to the questions, and at the very bottom, click submit. And ta-da, there you go. So you've just taken the quiz yourself and created the answer key in the process. Now, because of that, I don't need this tab anymore. I'm done taking the quiz. So you can actually close out of just that tab. And when you do, the edit screen should still be in the background there. And yes, it is. There's my quiz waiting for me in the background there. Now, you might have noticed one small difference about this. Because I just took the quiz, look at the very, very, very top now. There's a menu option that says responses, and right next to that is the number 1. That means there's been one response. Somebody took the quiz, which was you. You took your own quiz. This number will increase as people take the quiz and fill out the form. All right, good stuff. Well, let's take a look and see where that response is at. Because remember, what I told you was a form, the way Google Forms works is you build it in Google Forms, but that's not where the answers get stored. The answers actually get stored in a Google spreadsheet. So to view our responses, to see where those answers went, we're going to use this button. That's the third button over at the top that says View Responses. By clicking on that button, it'll take you to the spreadsheet that's holding the answers. However, quick time out here. If you've never, ever used Forms before, the very first time you click this button ever, you actually get a pop-up asking permission to create the spreadsheet. And it looks like this. This is the pop-up you're going to see. So if you've never, ever used Forms before, the very first time you click the View Response button, you'll get a pop-up that says, is it okay for Google to create a spreadsheet for you? And as long as you make sure this box is checked here at the bottom that says always create a new spreadsheet, as long as that's checked, you're in good shape. You can just click the blue create button and you'll never have to do this again. This is a one-time thing. You do it once, you never have to do it again after that. So for example, when I click on view responses, it'll take me straight to the spreadsheet. Okay. So from the top of the screen, we're in edit mode. I'm going to go over to the view responses button. And again, it will open a new tab. And in that new tab is my spreadsheet. And there it is. So here's my spreadsheet. And you'll notice that what it does is Google Forms creates a column for every question in the quiz. So there's a column that says enter your name, and there's a column that says enter your email address, and there's a column that says what percentage of the air is oxygen, and there's a column that says what molecule is shown below. It creates a column for every one of your questions. Now, it also creates a column for the timestamp. So whenever somebody fills out a quiz, it'll put the date and the time in there for you. And if you ask it to collect their username, it'll create a username column as well. Now, I turned it on and then turned it back off. So that's why mine's blank there, because I did not leave that turned on in my example. But it will collect their email address for you if you have that turned on. And that's the idea, guys. As people take your quiz, this will start filling in. Now, normally, this is the point where you would go ahead and send this out to your students. Since you probably can't do that right now, one thing you could do is you could just take the quiz a few more times if you want to get some more data in here so that, there's actually something in there to see. So, for example, if I close out of the spreadsheet, I could go back and click on View Live Form again. And I could take it a second time and a third time and a fourth time. So you might want to take it a few more times just so that you've got some data in there for what we're doing here today. So at the top there, I'm going to go ahead and click View Live Form, and maybe I'll take it again. So I'll just put in some fake names here. Whoops, there we go. So we'll add Harry to this, Harry Pitts, and we'll put in his email address there. I'll use mine, and then we'll let him take the quiz. All right, and there we go. And so you might want to go ahead and fill out the quiz a few more times and hit submit to go ahead and fill in a few more samples for your quiz. I'm going to go ahead then and close out of the quiz, the live view, and get back to my edit view. And you'll see that as I've done that, responses are now up to 2. And so if you take it a third and a fourth and a fifth time, those will keep going up. And again, if you now click the view responses button there, it will open up the spreadsheet, and you can see that it just continues to add a new row for each person who submits their response. Now, the question is, though, we've just been taking the quiz ourselves. How do we send it out to our students? How do we get this quiz to them? We've been doing it because we're in edit mode. So we just go up and click view live form and ta-da, we're there. Well, our students wouldn't be able to do that. So how do I take this quiz and actually get it to my kids? Well, if you look in the very, very top right-hand corner of the edit mode, you will see there's a big blue button that says send form. If I give that a click, it'll pop open a little pop-up here, and you'll see I've got 2 main options for how to send this out to my students. One of them here in the middle is the email option. It'll say send form via email. If I click in that box there, I can put in my students' email addresses there. So like if I wanted to send this over to Anthony, I could start typing in Anthony's name, and it would pop up, and I could choose Anthony out of there to send him this quiz. Now, it doesn't have to be individual email addresses. You can also use address book groups. So if you've made a period 1, period 2, period 3 group, you could type that in instead, and it would fill in the addresses. Or you could even use Google Groups. If your school is using Google Groups and you've got like groups set up for each period or for different grade levels, you could just put the Google group address in there as well. But the point is, one way to do this is to put in people's email addresses there. So that's one way, and then you could just click on send and send that on its merry way, okay? Now, another option, though, instead of doing that, instead of putting in their email addresses here, is you will see that above there, it says link to share, and it gives you this crazy long link, and you may not realize how long it is unless you start scrolling over, and you'll see it is like really, really, really long. This crazy long link here is a link to your form, and so you could simply copy that link. Just right click and choose copy, and then you could give that link to your students in many different ways. Just kind of depends upon how you want to get that out to them. So you could, again, email it, of course, if you wanted to, or you could put it on your web page. Maybe you have a classroom web page, and you would say to the kids, hey guys, go to my class page and click on the link for our quiz today. And the students could go there and click on that link and go right into the quiz. Or another example would be, and I'll pop over to the screen to show you, maybe do like a bell ringer document. What I mean by that is, I've seen one of our local schools, one of the teachers does this. He creates a Google document that he shares with his students the first week of school, and he tells them, every day that you come into class, first thing you do is you open up that shared doc, and I will have new stuff in there for each day. So he could come in here and he could just paste in that link, and he could say, hey, for today, start class by clicking on this link and taking a quiz over last night's readings. And so that would be a great way to get the link out to your students. Besides that, you could use a URL shortener. I like tiny.cc. You could make a QR code. You get the idea. Lots and lots of different ways. The point is, you either need to email this out to the students here, or you need to come up here and grab the link and make the link available to them. So at this point, we're going to pretend that you've been able to do that you have sent this form, this quiz out to your students, either via email or by providing a link, and they've clicked on it and they filled out the form, and your responses are going ding, 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 as the responses are starting to fill in as students have been taking the quiz. And at this point, what we need to talk about is, how do we then grade that? What do we do to grade all these responses as they come in? Well, here's what we're going to do. I'm going to switch over to the quiz I gave you guys. Okay, so I put together a quiz that I put a link out there for you. And again, that was right underneath the video. So right below our streaming video, there's a link to the sample quiz for this session. And I'm going to switch over to that. So let me pop on over there. And so this is on my other account where I've got that. And what you're going to see is that in my drive, I now have, and I'll zoom in a bit so you can see it's a little bit better. You will see that I have 2 entries in here for our webinar today. One of them is the Google form that I created called sample quiz-webinar. If I open that up, you will see that that's the edit mode. This is where I created the quiz for us today with all of the questions you guys already answered. However, you'll also see that right above there is a link or is a file that says sample quiz webinar responses. That's the spreadsheet that Google created for me. Remember, when you make a quiz, if you give it permission, Google makes an associated spreadsheet that holds the answers to this form. So the point is, guys, I can get to those answers 2 different ways. I could open up the edit mode again, and from the edit mode, I could click the view responses button like we did before to open up the spreadsheet. That would work, but I don't have to. You don't have to go back to the form. You could just go to your Google Drive and find the file that is the spreadsheet that is the same name that has responses at the end of it. If you open that up, then that will be the same thing as clicking the View Responses button. That will take you to the spreadsheet where all of your responses have been entered there. All right, so there it is. There, and by the way, I have, to protect the innocent, I have shortened up the columns for your name and your email so that we're not putting anybody's info out there for the world to see. But there it is. There's the results. So the question now is, how do we grade this? All right. Well, thankfully, it's a really, really simple process, and it's done through what's called an add-on. At this point, this is just data, okay? And you can do whatever you want with it. You could make charts out of it and graphs out of it. You could analyze it. You could download it. But the nice thing is Google allows other people to create little programs called add-ons. And there is one called Flubaroo. Now, if you don't know much about add-ons, we've actually done an entire session on add-ons for Google Documents. And I'd encourage you to look for that webinar. Well, it turns out that spreadsheets also get add-ons. And one of them is called Flubaroo. And what it does is it will grade a quiz for you by comparing all of the other rows to your answer key row. So you'll say which row is the answer key, and then Flubaroo will compare all the others to it, and it will grade the quizzes for you. Fantastic tool, free tool, very easy to use. So how does that work? Well, if you go up to the top, you'll see there's the add-ons button at the top of your spreadsheet there. If you don't have Flubaroo installed already, no problem. Just go down and click on Get Add-ons. And when you click on Get Add-ons from the add-ons menu, you'll get this pop-up screen where you can scroll through tons of add-ons, and there's lots of them out there, guys. Lots and lots of great add-ons. Well, Flubaroo is probably going to be kind of close to the top, and for me, wow, it's a very, very top one, as big as can be. You might have to scroll a bit to find it, but it should be pretty close to the top. All you have to do is hover your mouse on top of it and then click the plus free button to install it. So if I hover my mouse above Flubaroo and I click on the plus free button, it'll pop up a little thing asking for permission. You may have to scroll down. There it is. There's a big blue accept button at the bottom. So I'll say I accept that. And chugga, 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 it is adding Flubaroo to my add-ons list up here. Now, this is a one-time thing. You never have to do it again. Once you install Flubaroo once, it's going to be there anytime you open up a spreadsheet. So let's do it. So now I can click on add-ons. I'll zoom in a little bit here just so you can see what I'm clicking on there. When I click on add-ons, from the drop-down, you now see Flubaroo is in my menu there. All I have to do is go to Flubaroo and choose Grade Assignment. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to zoom out just a bit so I have room here. I'll click add-ons, Flubaroo, Grade Assignment. Now, when it asks me, when this pops up, it's only going to ask me 2 questions. That's how simple this is. The first question is, how much is everything worth? So you can change if you want. You can make things 1 point, 2 points, up to 5 points. I'm going to leave everything at just 1 point. I'll go down and click on the continue button. And then it's going to ask me the second question. And the second question is, where is the answer key? And so you just need to be able to scroll down through all of your responses, and you need to find your answer key, which in my case is the very first one. And I used my name, answer key, when I filled it out. That's why you might want to do that, so it's easier to find later. And that's it, guys. As soon as you've done that, you just click continue. Those are the 2 steps. You said how much each one is worth, and you said, here's the answer key. Flubaroo takes it from there, and it's done. It has now compared all of your rows to my answer key row. And what it's done is it's created a new tab here. Let me go ahead and close out of that so you can see it. It's created a new tab called grades down here at the bottom. And once again, I will shrink these up a bit to protect the innocent so that we don't have email addresses hanging out there. So I've still got my first tab, which is where you submitted, where Google Sheets collected your responses. Then I've got a second tab here where it's got all the grades. So I can scroll down and I can see each person. And as I go down, I can see how many points they got and what percent they scored. Now notice it does highlight in red anybody who scored below a 70%. So a big thanks to those people who intentionally missed a few so that we have a nice variety of answers here. That's very good. That if everybody got them all right, this just wouldn't look good. So thanks for taking one for the team there, guys. But this is a fantastic way now for me as a teacher to say, I can tell the students that I need to intervene with. These are the students that are having a tough time right now. Not only does this show me how the students did, but if I scroll way to the bottom, I can scroll across and see for each question how we did. So I can see the question about what percentage of the air is oxygen, that only got answered correctly by 42% of the people. I know myself then that, maybe I didn't do a good job teaching that. I need to circle back around and reteach that in a different way. I need a new approach to how I cover that. So this is great item analysis to let me see, are there things that I need to adjust? That's the power of formative assessments. It informs our instruction. Now, not only does this tell me how the kids did and how the questions got answered, this also lets me tell the students how they did as well. So if I go back up to add-ons and I go back down to Flubaroo, you will see there's a new option that wasn't there a moment ago, and that is to email grades. I can now send out a grade report to each student, letting them know how they did on the quiz. So it's just add-ons, Flubaroo, email grades. And when I do that, it pops up a little screen where I can choose to include the answer key if I want. I can put in a message here if I want. I'll just go ahead and hit continue. And whoosh, it is now emailing out to each of the people who completed this. Again, this is why you need to collect their email addresses. And 31 were sent out. So 31 people took this. Fantastic. And now if you check a little bit later, you should have, within the next minute or so, you should have an email that has an explanation of what you chose, what the correct answers were, and your overall score. So this helps students know, do they understand it or not? Because sometimes they're not sure. You take a quiz, you don't get it back for another day, you're not sure if you really understood it or not. Now students can know immediately whether they understand the material you're covering in class and whether or not they need to get some help. All right, guys, I know that's a lot of information, and that is only the basic level. And there's a lot more even beyond that I definitely would like to be able to take a look at in a future session, a part 2, shall we say, that will go even deeper into some of these questions. As we're starting to wrap up here, though, today, 2 quick things. I'm going to kind of take a look over to Anthony here and see if there was something that was really important and that he needed me to address. If not, no problem. He's been typing away very quickly in the Q&A doc, and I know he's been doing a fantastic job. So one of the questions that came in, oh my goodness, not really related to this in particular, but somebody wanted to know when we will have dates for our Google boot camps. We do run 4-day boot camps all about the Google products. We should be having those dates within the next few weeks. We will announce them through our newsletter, which I will show you again here real quick as we wrap up how you can sign up for our newsletter. That's how we'll send that information out to people, but we'll also put it on our tech integration page as well. All right. Well, guys, thanks again so much. As we wrap up, just a couple of last key things here to share with you. As a reminder, all of the resources for this session can be found at tiny.cc/spark210. I'll pop out there one last time so we can see that. This is where you can go to find the recorded video for this session in the future. You can find all the help guides for the session. You can find the evaluation. Please do take a moment to fill that out. Your feedback is very helpful and we appreciate it. And that's also where you can take another Google form, a quiz over this webinar to get your PDF certificate of completion for 1 contact hour. From our site, our tech integration site, this is where you can also go to click on PD schedule to see upcoming events. You can go to recorded trainings to see past webinars. You can click on newsletter, as we just said a moment ago, to sign up for the Spark Lines newsletter, which we send out about once a month, maybe twice if there's a lot of information. And that will let you know about upcoming webinars as well as our other professional development trainings, including the Google Boot Camps. And of course, there is the contact info. Please stay in touch with us. You can follow us on Twitter, Google+, email us, get connected with us through there as well. So I just want to thank you once again for taking the time to watch this session. We hope to see you again over the coming weeks for more education technology webinars. Take care, everyone.